All right, so this is the main thing you'll probably want to play with today is Velociraptor. Like yesterday, at least second half of the day, Splunk was the main thing. And so what Velociraptor, we'll start with this 371 project. Velociraptor is an incident response tool. It lets you have one central machine, usually a Linux machine, which controls all the other machines, which are typically Windows machines. And you can, the point is, if you have a security problem on your network, you get a report, like somebody reports, I'm getting a strange pop-up on my screen, or my antivirus has detected something malicious on my machine, then you immediately have the question, what exactly happened to that machine? And if it's infected with something, how many other machines are infected with the same thing? And that is what Velociraptor is intended to fix. So it's going to create a central point of not just logging like Splunk, but a central point of administration. So you can do threat hunting and investigations of attacks from that central location. So the first thing is just set up the server client arrangement. So here's my Linux machine. I've connected by SSH to a virtual machine running on a different machine in my network. And so I'm going to install Velociraptor. Now, Velociraptor is under active development. It got bought by Rapid7. And if you go to the GitHub page to see it, you'll see the latest version is 0.73. And this is a very interesting tool. The way they've designed it is, I think, very clever. There are signatures and there's executables for all different platforms, and it uses the same executable for the client and the server. There's no difference. So you see, here's the one for Mac. Darwin is the Mac operating system. Here's one for Linux. And it looks like there's none for Windows, but that's because you just aren't seeing them all. There are 60 assets here. And so now you'll see you have Windows 386, you have Windows 64, you even have Mac on ARM, which is the Mac M1 and later, and you even have Windows on ARM, I think. Yep. Yeah, Windows AMD. There may not be a Windows ARM, but there is a Windows AMD, and that will run on Windows on ARM, which is what I'm going to use. So there are all these things, version 7.3. You can see what they are. Anyway, what we're going to use is the latest one. 7.3 works very well. And so here's my server. Let me just make this window narrower so I can see what I'm doing. All right. So I start here. I make a directory, Velociraptor, and then go into that directory just to keep things organized. And now I'm going to get the first thing I need. This is going to be the executable. Now notice my command here is going to download Linux AMD 64, which is if I'm running Linux on an Intel processor. But of course, this is running on a Mac M1. So if I do uname -A, you'll see I'm running Linux on an ARM processor. So I don't want this one. I want the ARM version. So I'll go up here and find Linux ARM64. This is the signature. Here's the actual executable. So I'll copy that link address and then wget that. All right, so there it comes. If I do ls-l, I'll see I have Velociraptor on ARM64, and it's not executable because it just downloaded, so I have to make it executable with chmod +x. All right, now if I do ls-l, guess I'll make that bigger. There. Now I can see it's executable and it turns green is how they show it to you here. So I now have an executable file to run Velociraptor on my Linux. So I run it, and then I'm going to do this config generate. This will generate a starting configuration file, which we're going to need as we go ahead. So I run this. I'm not copying the executable from my instructions because it's different. I've got the ARM version, not the AMD version. So I'm just going to use VE tab here and then paste in the rest of the command. This will generate a configuration called velociraptor.config.yaml in my current folder. So ls-l, show it there, 12 kilobytes. It's a text file. So now we're going to need the IP address of this server, which is here, 192.168.0.246. And I'll just copy it. All right, and now I'm going to edit that configuration file. If you like using VI or something, feel free. I'm a wimp. I use Nano. All right, and now in this thing, there are addresses in 5 places, and we want to change them all to the right address. So we're going to change localhost and 127.0.0.1 to it. And in Nano, it's Control W, Control R to search for things. Localhost, and put in that IP address I put in my clipboard there. And I'm going to say yes and yes. Okay, I replaced 2 occurrences. And now I have to do the same thing again, Control W, Control R, because they also have the numerical loopback address in here for some reason. Both are in here, and I want all of them to just point to the right address. So there. That's the right address. And now I say yes, yes, yes. So there's a total of 5 IP addresses in there that you want to change to the right address. And then just save the file, Control X, Y, Enter. All right, now we have to create administrative user. So we have to run the executable and then use these commands telling the configuration file to use, the one we just created, user add admin, role administrator. So make a user named admin with the role of being an administrator. So I run the executable and then paste in the rest of that command. Now it asks me for a password. I'm just putting in plain old password because I'm on a private system. No one's going to be hacking in, and that way I won't forget the password. And let's see if I can, yikes, get these crazy things off my screen. All right, let me make this window skinnier so it doesn't keep doing that. All right, there we are. So now I want to start the server, which is going to be this. You just run the executable and your configuration file, and then you run the front end, and I'm running it in verbose mode so we can see what it does. So I run it, tab, front end -b. Okay, now it's going to print. So it's starting up the thing, and now see the GUI is ready to handle TLS requests on 8889. That's the graphical user interface. And the front end is ready to handle requests at port 8000. There are 2 listening ports. The 8889 is for you to control it in the browser. The 8000 is for clients to phone home to the server. So this 8889 address is the one I want to open in a browser. I'll copy that and paste it into my browser here. Now, like many security tools, it's using a HTTPS connection, but I didn't actually tie it to a public domain and get a real certificate. So it's going to warn me that this is, what they call snake oil HTTPS. Now I'm connected. I have to log in with the admin account and the password I just chose, which was just password. And now I'm in. This is the glorious Velociraptor control panel. And all right, let me go back to my project. So there's a flag you can find here just to turn in something. That means you got the server working. Now, the server can monitor its own Linux server state and such, but that's not very exciting. Now, the more valuable thing is read a Windows client. Now, I could stop this, but I think I'll just open another terminal, so I have 2 of them. And I think that's right. Yep, good. Debian. All right, and go into Velociraptor. All right, so now I have another SSH window into the same server, and I can now edit that file. Now, see, notice what happened when I opened that configuration. When I opened the management page, the browser warned me this HTTPS is no good, and I had to override that. The problem is when my Windows client phones home to be controlled by the server, it's an automated process, and it would give me the same error and refuse to connect. So I have to tell it to accept this unsigned SSL. Otherwise, the client will not be willing to connect. Now, this is a YAML file, which is like Python. Indentation matters. White space matters. So you have to go down to the end of the first certificate. That's information about the HTTPS certificate we're using. And after the nonce line, I have to put in this text indented correctly to tell it I'm using self-signed SSL. Otherwise, my Windows machine will not be able to connect. So Control X, Y, Enter. We'll save that. Now I prepare the MSI installer, and I can use the GUI to do this. So at the top left, I click the 2-bar button, which is here. And now I'm monitoring the Linux server itself. And I can use the plus to add another artifact, which is what they call this. And the artifact I want to add is MSI. And here is this is server util create MSI. This will create a Microsoft installer package to install the client on Windows machines, which is very nice. Now, the only issue is I need to feed in this configuration file that I just edited, so I'm going to need the full path. PWD will show it. It's home Debian Velociraptor and then that name, velociraptor config.yaml. So that's what I have to feed in here as a parameter. And there it is. I'm just going to copy it out of my instructions. So configure in the custom config, that's where it goes. So this is an artifact. We're going to be using these a lot. And you can launch it with no changes, but if you have to adjust it, you click Configure Parameters, and then you click the wrench. And here's where I put the custom configuration, which is the path to my configuration file, home Debian Velociraptor client config.yaml. And now I launch. When you launch anything, it will appear here in the top line, and it'll show you the status here as it goes. It was pending, and now it's completed with a check mark. If you go down here, there's a log that will show you what it did. And here it uploaded a file. If I look at uploaded files, there they are. Let me go back to my instructions. I think it's uploaded files we want. Right, so now we're going to serve now. Okay, so I could download the file in this browser onto my Mac and then drag and drop it on my Windows, and that would get it there. But in fact, it was generated on this Linux machine. So that generated Windows MSI file lives on this machine anyway. And what I'm going to do is just start a web server on my Linux machine and serve it up to the Windows client that way. The only problem is Velociraptor puts it in a really annoying place. So I just did a find to find it. I looked on the whole box for any file containing both Velociraptor and MSI to see where it goes. And there it is. It's a ridiculously long name. Now, I made another one earlier on this machine. And actually, all right, I don't really know. I'm going to find out which one of these is later. This happened to a student of mine. If you do this project more than once, you end up with several of these. So I'm going to figure out which one is the most recent, the one I created today. So I'm going to copy this path and do an ls-l of that path. All right, and now I can see these ones are for December 3. This one is from December 11. So it's FCTCR is the one I want, which is this one. So this one is the one I created today on December 11. All right, so what I'm going to do is copy that whole path. I'm just going to make a copy of this file somewhere I can find it. I'm going to copy that ridiculous path and put it in the current directory as win.msi. There, that's the one I want. Now I don't have to hunt all over the place for it. It's right there. Now, to serve it up, I'm going to install Apache. I think I already have Apache running on this box. I'm just going to do sudo ss-pant with a socket state to show me the listening ports, and that will show me if my machine is currently listening on port 80. And it is. So Apache is already installed and running. Now, Apache serves files from here, var www HTML. So there's the old velociraptor.msi. I'm going to get rid of that because that's the one I made previously. And I don't want to, I want to use the one I made today. The old one is probably okay, but in principle, I could have changed my IP address. So I'm going to remove that. We'll see if, yep, I got to use sudo. Sudo remove. Okay, that gets rid of it. And now I can do sudo copy my local thing called win to that location, var www HTML velociraptor.msi. There we go. That should do it. All right. So now my Debian machine is now a web server, and it is serving up that file, so I can put it on my Windows machine by just browsing to it. So I go to my Windows desktop, and open the browser. Firefox was probably fine. Yes. There we go. All right. And up here I put HTTP, then my Debian address 192.168.0.246. All right, and if I go there, I should see a default Apache Debian page. That's good. And if I put in /velociraptor.msi, I should be able to download the Windows client. And I don't have access. Oh, I forgot to make it world readable. I have to do sudo chmod all plus read and that path, var www html velociraptor.msi. It was in the instructions, but I had deviated from my path a little bit here and missed it there. That makes it readable by everybody. Now I should be able to refresh this. And there it comes, velociraptor.msi. And it's a Microsoft installer file, so you can just run it the way you would install normal Windows software. Just open file. It warns you it's an executable. Yeah, that's fine. It should run the installer. Yep. Now it's going to complain again that this file looks kind of funny. But you have to give more info, run anyway. This is putting your machine under control of the Linux server, so it really isn't essentially a remote access Trojan, but it's just an authorized one. But Windows is correct to say that, this is the kind of thing that could put your machine at risk. But there it goes, installing it with a proper Windows installation. This is very nice. And by the way, this is the upgrade I had to make. There used to be a different process here, but these MSI files work on Windows 11. The older version of the client they made worked on Windows 10, but not Windows 11. So I have to approve the privilege escalation. And there it goes. It's really nice. And you, by the way, can just uninstall it with add remove programs and control panel. Unlike most open source projects, Velociraptor has really put in the effort to make a really proper Windows installer that gives you all the features of installing and uninstalling Windows software that you'd like to have. There it goes. I think it's done. And if it's done, I should now have control of my Windows machine. So I go to Velociraptor. Up here, I can search clients. I click the down arrow and show all. And now I have a Windows 11 client. So there it is. I'm sort of surprised the server shows up here, but I'm not going to worry about that. This is my client ID. Let's see if it works. If I click on that, I'm supposedly in contact with my client machine. Now, by the way, you can examine the file system directly and go into the registry and just navigate the machine this way, but I never like doing it that way. That's not the most useful way to use this tool. I'm going to go back, show all, and click it. The way to use this tool is the collected button. This is a forensic tool. Basically, it's incident response, which is network forensics. And the great thing about this is it has pre-made artifacts that do everything you would ever want to do. You could write your own, but I've never had a reason to do that. If you click the plus, you can ask the client almost any question you want. So I'm just going to run netstat, just a Windows command line command, just to make sure things are working. Netstat, Windows Network netstat. And then I'll just launch it. And here it is showing an hourglass waiting to run. I click that line. Here it is showing a running man. And I can go to the log, and here it is starting to do something. And it shouldn't take, there it's done. 124 rows of output. Here's the results. That's what netstat looks like. What are all the listening ports and connections on your machine? So that means I am now in control of the Windows machine, and I can now research things on it. So that's 371. And once you reach this point, you're done with this one. There's several flags to turn in. And after this, I'll pause and let you folks get to this point. But after this, what we're going to do is just infect the Windows machine with various kinds of malware, and we're going to research the infection remotely with Velociraptor. So let me stop this recording, and you folks can do that stuff.